For live CBS Sports HQ, thanks for joining us here. Sunday just around the corner. Zach Aldridge here with Dave Richard. We've got a lot of news to get you to as we look forward for another week of fantasy football. Dave, we're gonna cross a lot of topics, so we won't waste any time.
Good.
We'll go ahead and hop straight into this one. Let's start in Dallas. Dak Prescott finally making his return, not listed on the injury report, meaning he's starting on Sunday. You feel good enough about him to put him in your lineup?
We've been waiting for him to come back, and the last time we saw him, that Cowboys offensive line was a mess. They played Tampa Bay. They pressured the snot out of him. Now he's getting the Lions. And that offensive line for Dallas, it looks pretty good. I think Dak Prescott will be a top 5 quarterback this week. If you've got him, you've been patient, you deserve it. Start him.
Had to wait quite some time, and now he's making his return. Tua Tagovailoa also been out for quite some time himself with his concussion, not played since week 4. He's not listed on their injury report for the Dolphins. Do you feel good about him to play him?
We know what the upside is because we saw it against the Baltimore Ravens. And you remember that game. It was like a 50-point game for him. It was amazing. But you know what the downside is, too? And here's the thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. One quarterback this year has posted more than 22 fantasy points against him. It was Josh Allen. It was a lot more than 22 fantasy points. I think the real key with Tua is if his receivers are healthy. If Jalen Waddle is out there with him on Sunday night, and if we get reports earlier in the day saying, yes, Jalen Waddle will play, well, now we're talking about that Dolphins offense at full strength. They're at as full strength as it can get at this point in the season. So I like him. I would call him a top 12 quarterback who's got pretty good upside.
More on that Dolphins offense, Jalen Waddle in specific, you mentioned him. We don't know for sure if he's going to play that shoulder injury. If you have him, do you start him?
If you've got him and he's active, the answer is yes. There's just too much upside to ignore Jalen Waddle. The shoulder injury was a little annoying, but we know that he can come through on 6 catches, over 100 yards. That's what you're looking for in fantasy football. So I like him a lot, but you need a plan B just in case he doesn't play in the game. If you've got him, you need to make sure you've got a receiver on the bench that plays in the Sunday night game or in the Monday night game. Look on the waiver wire. See if Darnell Mooney's there. See if Tyquan Thornton's there. See if Devontae Parker's there. And I think that's the order I would take them in. One of those 3 would be a good replacement if we get to Sunday night and Jalen Waddle not available for the Dolphins.
Going back to the quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, hamstring injury now. He's already struggled this season as is. If he's your QB, I feel bad for you to begin with. But what do you do if you have him if you don't have any better options?
You can bench him. You can cut him if it's a 10-team league because Russell Wilson just has not looked like Russ of old. Remember, let Russ cook?
Right.
Now it looks like Russ is cooked. Don't feel good about starting him even if he plays. Hey, this Jets defense has actually been pretty good this year. I would try and stay away from him. You see where he is in our consensus rankings. We never thought he'd be that far down. And I never thought I would say, sit Russell Wilson and start Geno Smith. But here we are, and I like that move if you do it.
Mac Jones with the Patriots, he missed all week at practice, practice all week.
Yeah.
He's been out since week 3 with
Got
that
the
ankle
ankle.
injury.
Yep.
Bailey Zappi was balling in the meantime. Do you feel good enough about Mac making his return to start him?
So the good news here is that you're only going to use Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi if it's a 2-quarterback or super flex league, so you probably don't even have a significant decision to make. I would try and stay away from either Patriots quarterback. I think they run the ball against Chicago. And this Bears defense, you don't know any names in their secondary. And it's a really young secondary. They hold quarterbacks to the 9th fewest fantasy points this season. So it's not a good start for Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi.
You like the Patriots running back. They've been kind of by committee. Damian Harris, full participant in practice. Do you let him go and start him if you have him?
So I don't know how the Patriots look at what Ramondre Stevenson's done over the past 2 weeks and say, okay, yeah, let's just give it all back to Damian Harris. Or even say, let's go with a 50-50 split. How do they do that? Ramondre Stevenson, past 2 games, 5.4 yards per carry, 15 runs of 5+ yards. He's a number 2 running back, but I think Damian Harris is too. That's how bad I think this Bears run defense is. I would take a chance on him on the hope that he gets 10 to 12 carries, finds the end zone against Chicago.
If you have Ramondre Stevenson, now that Damian Harris is coming back, should you look to try to trade him? And what could you get for Stevenson if you want to give him up?
I think you could try and trade him, but I think smart fantasy managers know that Stevenson, if Harris is on the field, they're going to share. So that upside that we saw in the past 2 weeks might not be there as much. If you can turn him into, how about trying to turn him into Courtland Sutton? Because once Russ gets back, that's the receiver that he's connected with the most. That's a move that I would make.
Another running back, DeAndre Swift. We say questionable a whole lot. Seems like he truly is questionable to play this week with a shoulder injury. If you have him, what do you do with him?
I think you start him if he plays. And again, this is a Cowboys defense that's pretty good. And the Lions offense, last time we saw them, they were pretty bad. But I think you could look at DeAndre Swift and say, okay, 2 or 3 games this year with a touchdown, 2 or 3 games this year with at least 80 yards with the touchdown, and the third game he did not finish, didn't have good numbers in it. I think he bounces back. I think he's a number 2 fantasy running back this week.
What about Jamal Williams? Is he still startable?
He is as a flex, and really not the coolest flex in the world. We're talking about a running back who, if he doesn't score somewhere between 5 and 8 PPR points, nobody wants that. So you're hoping that he scores a touchdown, which is why he's ranked with other running backs who you kind of are hoping for a touchdown this week.
There on that list at 14, we have Christian McCaffrey. Traded just yesterday from Carolina to San Francisco. He practiced with the 49ers today.
Yeah.
They're saying there's some packages for him to be able to play. Is there enough plays out there that he could garner enough opportunity to get points to be worth the start?
You know that this guy, every time he touches the football, has the chance to score a touchdown. And I think that when it comes to Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers, they're going to be really smart and really creative in how they use him. I can't wait to see it. But this week, I can't help but think that he's only going to see maybe 30-40% of the snaps. That being said, there's already talk about a red zone package. I'm sure he can look at the playbook in San Francisco and say, okay, I know this play, I know that play, I know that play. Let's go. Yeah. And I think you could get him on the field, and he could do well on 30 or 40% of the snaps. That's what you're hoping for with him. It's the only time I'll say this all year. Christian McCaffrey is a number 2 fantasy running back. Because once he's in the swing of things, he's not just a number 1 fantasy running back. He is the number 1 fantasy running back.
McCaffrey leaving a situation in Carolina where their offense was absolutely terrible. Leaves behind Deontay Foreman, Chuba Hubbard. What do you like about that running back room there?
Terrible, huh? You mean barely throwing the ball downfield and not scoring any points? That's a bad thing? Look, it's a nightmare in Carolina. I would go get Chuba Hubbard. He's the younger running back. He's got much better efficiency so far this year. I liked him better in the preseason as well. With Deontay Foreman, you're hoping that he gets a lot of work. And there's already talk that it won't be just these 2 guys, but also Raheem Blackshear getting in the mix. And who's that? Who knows?
Right.
But I know he went to Virginia Tech, rather. Fast guy, not a big guy. He could come in and take like 5 snaps away from both of them. I like Chuba Hubbard better because, call me crazy, I think Carolina's going to be trailing in a lot of games, and the running backs tend to get a lot of catches in this offense, or at least they did when Christian McCaffrey was there. So I don't mind Chuba Hubbard. If you're banking on Deontay Foreman scoring, note this. They played 6 games this year, 2 snaps inside the 5-yard line for Carolina. Think about it. Think about how many snaps they played. 2 times they've been near the goal line. No wonder why they stink.
It's just all bad in Carolina. That's why they might be looking to get rid of some more guys. J.K. Dobbins, on the other hand, he's going to be out for quite some time, 4 to 6 weeks. He's going to have arthroscopic knee surgery.
Yeah.
You were on HQ earlier in the day discussing that as we break it down. Who in that Ravens backfield do you like to replace the production if you're looking for someone on your fantasy lineup?
Are you looking for just this week, or are you looking rest of season? Because these are 2 different answers.
Let's give them both.
Let's start with this week. I think it's Kenyon Drake. I think he's the main guy, even if they activate Gus Edwards off of IR. And you remember Gus Edwards because he was once upon a time the darling of the backfield in Baltimore. But he's coming off of IR. He had a torn ACL. I am sure they're going to take it slow with Gus Edwards. They've got a lightning quick running back named Justice Hill. He's just not very strong. He doesn't get a ton of work. Drake is the one who's going to get the best opportunity. I like him as a flex this week. But moving forward, rest of season, I kind of want to have Gus Edwards on my team because I think when we get to November, he'll be ramped up. He'll be ready to go. He'll be their main running back. I don't have a lot of trust and faith in Kenyon Drake. That's the point. But I do think by the time we get to, let's call it December 10th, hopefully by then J.K. Dobbins is back. Hopefully he'll be ramped up and he'll be a running back that helps you win a fantasy championship. So we're going to piecemeal this thing. This week it's Drake. Next month it's Gus Edwards. Month after that, J.K. Dobbins. And don't forget this either. The Ravens have been throwing the ball at a 55% rate. That's a lot higher than what they've done in the past, except for last year when they threw it like crazy. They didn't have a choice because they didn't have a run game. They're trying to solve that now by using these running backs bit by bit, game by game.
Lamar, of course, is going to throw it some. Mark Andrews should be back.
Better be back because he's awesome for fantasy managers, and you need a plan B just in case Mark Andrews doesn't play. But it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're carrying a second tight end on your bench this week. You could do that and you can be safe, but of course you're not going to use this tight end unless Mark Andrews is out. So you can eyeball some tight ends on your waiver wire. Evan Ingram, Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, Hunter Henry, Daniel Bellinger, and Noah Fant. If you see a lot of those names on your waiver wire, you don't need to carry a second one, and you can just wait until Sunday. If Andrews is ruled out, okay, emergency situation, you go to your waiver wire and you pick up one of those dudes.
That Ravens offense, they're banged up, if we're going to be honest about it. Rashad Bateman limited in practice this week with a foot injury. Do you think he is worth being started if you have him?
No, I don't. Low-end flex at best. And we know what his upside is because we've seen him take a short pass to the house. We've seen him catch a deep pass. And he's a big part of what the Ravens offense wants to do. But I don't know if this is the week to trust him. I think you got to give him a week just to wait and see what happens. If you're looking for a waiver wire replacement, go to New York. Wan'Dale Robinson, rookie wide receiver that they have. He looked good last week. He only played 14 snaps. I bet he does more than double that in snaps. And I hope he does, double that in catches and yards. I was going to say double his fantasy points. That means he would have to score 2 touchdowns. Let's not go that crazy. But a 4 or 5 catch game, 50 yards, maybe a touchdown on top of that, Zach. I'd like to see Wan'Dale Robinson on a lot of fantasy benches.
Over in San Diego, Keenan Allen, he has a hamstring injury. You give him a play here? You start him?
If he's out there and there's no word of a snap count, then I'm okay starting Keenan Allen just in PPR leagues. In non-PPR, half PPR, I think I'm going to take a slower approach with him. But in full PPR, we know he gets good volume, and they're a little thin on wide receivers. Josh Palmer, their receiver that replaced Keenan Allen, concussion, not playing this week. We know Mike Williams is a stud. We know that Gerald Everett's going to get some targets too. But I think Keenan Allen is the guy that we've seen Justin Herbert rely on the most in the past couple of seasons. He's been their most consistent wide receiver. I think you could pencil him in for at least 12 PPR points.
Chargers are playing Seattle.
They are.
Tyler Lockett, questionable for that game. How do you feel about that?
I think this might be the toughest one for fantasy managers this week because he didn't practice for 2 days. And then on Friday, he did get in a little bit of work. He's questionable for the game. We know what his upside is because he's tied to Geno Smith, and Geno Smith has been a very efficient quarterback last week notwithstanding. I think if he's out there and he plays, you've got to use Tyler Lockett. You just have to dial back expectations for this game. Let's call him a number 2 fantasy receiver.
Number 2 fantasy receiver, number 1 fantasy guy here on HQ. That's Dave Richard. If you miss anything that we went through, because that was a lot, there's a lot of opportunity to always stay tuned with everything fantasy football. That's on the podcast, Fantasy Football Today. They break down everything from do you play Christian McCaffrey to you name it. Get their podcast wherever you subscribe for Fantasy Football Today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.